Good morning, good morning, good morning, everybody. I'm really happy to be here. As Sarah said, my name is Jay. Let's just get into it. Like any website made in the 2000s, there's an obligatory About Us page. So about me, my name is, my mom named me Justin. My brothers call me Jay, and hopefully by the end of this, we all call each other friends. That's my corny little opening for everybody. I've had a bunch of jobs in the creative business, most recently at Spotify as their global director of creative strategy. I've been a creative director. I've been a producer. I've been a music producer and a bunch of other things. And over the last couple of years, here are two things that I'm proud I made. First piece is the relaunch of today's top hits, Spotify's biggest playlist for all of the pop and top 40 stuff that we've done, featuring some of the biggest artists in the world. The second is this. It's a concept called Free Studio that we've done with a bunch of different creators around the Black and brown community, just trying to bring different artists together. Frequency was our platform, and it still exists for highlighting black creatives in the music business. And so just a couple of pieces over the last year that I was pretty proud of. Thank you. So today, what I would love to talk to you all about, no matter what you do, whether that's design, you work for a brand in marketing or advertising, you create, or you're just out here kind of personally branding yourself, I pose that everyone should be disrupting something. If you brand yourself as a disruptor, great. That means you're a cool person and probably cooler than me. But despite your personal identification and how you look at your creativity in the world, I believe everyone should disrupt something, keeping that challenger energy. Because even if you win, no one really likes a snobby leader. Let's go to church, brother. The reason being I'll get into soon, but we've all been at places where once you start to do well, you wonder, well, why aren't we still doing well? Well, I'm going to give some insight into why that is, especially working at a company like Spotify, which culturally we happen to be at the forefront of a lot of people's minds when they think about some of the things they really like to do in their lives. But trying to make sure that that continues to be the case long term and not turn into utility, where we're just a repository of the music you listen to every day, becomes difficult over time. And so share a voice and trying to continue that gets hard as you become a leader in the business. Trying to keep the energy of someone who hasn't won everybody's hearts and minds is hard to do. So I'm going to use that as an allusion to what you could do in your careers and your businesses, what you do at your job, and the like. And we'll start with how we'll end. I don't like having conversations with people and like, you've got to wait 30 minutes to figure out what I'm talking about. So I'll tell you from the beginning what this is all about. Number one, being a leader isn't bad, but acting like one can be. So what I mean by that is, once you get there and you win a consumer, once you get there and you've won your client, don't stop trying after that. The reason why they liked you is because you did cool things. And we've all worked at a place or done something cool, and then you get complacent. You stop doing something cool, keep doing cool stuff. It doesn't have to be the same cool thing. Try something new. Don't be afraid to innovate even though you've already done the thing you wanted to do. 2, challenger is a state of mind, not a state of being. And we'll get into this in a second. I don't know if there are any brand strategists in the room, but this deck conflates 2 words that I'm sure someone's going to get mad at me about. We'll talk about that in a second. But at the end of the day, being a challenger and acting like a challenger are 2 different things. And I'll get into why that's important a little bit later, but always try to win even at your own game. And then lastly, disrupt expectations, not status quo. This is leaning into that same thought process. There are such a thing as a disruptor brand, which is a strategy and a positioning, but trying to make sure that you're adding something a little bit extra to the experience for people and disrupting their expectations is something I think everyone should always do and keep top of mind. So let's get into it. The elephant in the room. Is there a brand strategist in here? Does anyone consider themselves a brand? Well, I know Chioke is. Okay. The word being a disruptor brand and being a challenger brand are very different things. And so I want to talk a little bit about what the difference is, because that's not really a jargon-esque thing. The idea is, can you be a disruptor and a challenger at the same time? And the answer to that is that, yeah, you're kind of. Not really. But I'll tell you why I say this. You know, decks usually have one of these things where you put up a definition. And so, yeah, this is what I'm talking about. Actually, I'm not talking about this. This bottom thing says a company that changes the traditional way an industry operates. I don't care necessarily about that so much. I'm actually talking about this top thing. Just adding a little bit extra and changing the way somebody thinks about something, moving an expectation forward. Because disruptive brands and challenger brands are different things. This little graph does a great job of kind of explaining that. There are people in the beginning who try to learn the influences and their trends and the way that things really work in their industry. You can kind of grab people in their early adoption phase and change their minds, whether you're a small brand or an early stage brand. What a challenger brand is a brand that's very close to being a leader in their category, but is kind of fighting the behemoth in a sense. Think any Culver's versus McDonald's, right? You know, McDonald's clearly is winning the category. Culver's, I guess, in certain markets would be a challenger brand. You don't necessarily have to be a challenger brand to act like a challenger. Where a disruptor brand is something a little bit different. It's like Airbnb. Airbnb came into the hotel industry as a complete disruptor to the way that you do that type of thing. They took the industry and turned it on its head. There are still states this day trying to figure out what the heck to do regulation-wise with Airbnb. But it's a blue ocean strategy. You come in and say, whatever the way you think something should work, I'm going to do that completely differently, and the consumer has to try to catch up to that. Well, I don't necessarily want to talk about that. Disruptive brands break industry conventions. Challenger brands shift perceptions, but are not necessarily disruptive brands. I pose that you don't have to necessarily be either, but I like you as a designer, as someone who works at a company, as someone who does anything, to embody the energy of both. So this is kind of the mission statement of this whole thing. Strong brands, strong creatives, strong designers want to become power players with challenger energy that disrupt consumer expectations. I want anyone who does and makes anything in the world to be able to aspire to being a leader in whatever they do, but also continue to innovate and move towards something new in their careers, something new for the companies they work for, by embodying an energy that thinks about it more holistically. So I'll give you an example of some of my favorite ways of thinking about this, and then I'd love to talk to some of you about this. I'm speeding through this. I know this is supposed to be like a 30-minute thing, but I'm going to speed this a little bit. How? Has anybody seen this before? No? Yes? So there's an interesting book called Overthrow, 10 Ways to Tell a Challenger Story, and it leans into these archetypes for brands. They all are based upon more of a personality trait or not of the way the brand represents itself to consumers. And they're very interesting because you've seen companies like these before. There's companies like MailChimp who try to be real and human and talk to you face to face like a person. Want to send more emails? We can help you with that. There are companies that are much more like democratizers, where they say, hey, we want to give you access to whatever it is you need. We're going to make this simple and easy for you. I'm going to be that person who connects you to whatever matters to you. There are companies that come in and they're the next generation. They talk a little bit about we are whatever you love 2.0. You know, we're the next generation of whatever it is that you care about. And the energy that these brands carry, whether you believe in the mission or not, are ones that you can align yourself to. Not only that, they dictate the way that they present the work that they do in the world. You don't just fall into the space of always trying to beat the next competitor, trying to do advertising that conquests the next consumer. You carry an energy that represents what your brand is about, and you do it every day. And I love being able to think about companies in this way, because keeping this energy going is what can keep a company from becoming stale long time. I'll give you a few of my favorites. Maverick energy, always being counterculture, kind of working under the beat of your own drum, never getting complacent in what's working or what's not. This is my favorite kind of challenger energy, and the one I always lead with. Red Bull is one of my favorite versions of this. Talking so much. But the reason why Red Bull is one of my favorites, Red Bull is an energy drink company that acts like an entertainment company. You know, and in being an energy drink company, what they realized is the counterculture that is adjacent to where a Pepsi and a Coke go, which is more pop culture, more generation now. They said, well, no, instead of going into the NBA or trying to own a stadium like Coca-Cola is going to do, we're going to own the dance world. We're going to do beatboxing and breakdancing. We're going to sponsor people creating weird flying machines and that run them off into the middle of a lake. We're going to do skateboarding and BMX and all of the things that the top brands in the world don't necessarily care so much about. But if we do all of them, you're bifurcating the audience in a way that is incredible. And now brands are trying to copy this strategy a bit. But the problem with Maverick energy is that it's hard to maintain. It costs a lot of money to do everything all the time that's different and separate. So I say this in here, but if you've got the budget or you work at a company that does it, do this. It does work if you can convince the people in the room to buy into it. If you don't, you can carry their energy in your work and just think, what is the audience next to me? You don't have to shoot so straight and narrow at everything and always go for the person that you think can do your work. And this applies to people who aren't necessarily in marketing like me. If you're a designer and you think, oh, I design for these types of people, I'm always targeting this type of consumer, I do this kind of work, I am this. What's to the right or left of that? What is something that feels like what you do, but can be considered to be maybe a faux pas a little bit in that? You might find that there's an entirely new world of people who would love what it is that you have if you just take a step to the right. The second, Zagger energy, talking about taking a step to the right. Zagger energy is the idea that whatever someone is doing that is the norm in your business, so less about who you're talking to and more about what you actually do in your actions, we're going to zag when you zig. And so for a brand like Warby Parker, I remember the first pair of glasses I bought and when I moved to New York. And Warby Parker was a newer company at the time. The idea that they're going to send me 5 or 6 pairs of glasses to my house, I don't have to go to the optometrist, I don't have to talk to anybody, they have my prescription on file, direct to consumer, and each pair of glasses is like $80, $90, was preposterous. And they were cool, they're not the most expensive things, they're not Gucci frames or something like that, but who cares? I got to try them on in real life before AR, VR, all this stuff on the face, like you're just going to send me glasses and you trust me not to steal them? I'm going to send these back? Unheard of, but what was incredible about that, and what I would like to instill in this group now, is that adding the unexpected value that may or may not feel like a good idea in your business can be the thing that actually makes your business. It can be the thing that allows people to look at you a bit differently because you're not the person who's opened up a bunch of optometry stores and optical things and tried to get me to come in and sit down for an hour and fiddle with random glasses all the time. We're going to treat our eyeglass stores like Apple stores, and we're going to send you things at home and add a little value to your experience. The idea of the unexpected nugget of joy is one that I think anybody in any sort of business, creative or not, should at least consider along the way. Lastly, democratize your energy. Duolingo has been absolutely killing it lately on a lot of different fronts. But if anybody remembers a world before Duolingo, trying to learn another language was not only difficult, but it was kind of complicated. You know, you had to buy multiple courses. You had to pay for some kind of, what's that? Yeah, it was crazy. And I think what's been incredible about the way Duolingo has gone about doing this is that not only have they gamified the process, but they made at least the beginning of it free. They said, hey, we're going to give you the opportunity to get just the most baseline experience that we can offer you, make it fun, make it ridiculous, and make it free. And then if you want to continue and you want to learn a bit more and you want to go a little bit deeper, we'll give you the experience at a rate that makes sense for you and give you a bunch of different options. I think for any company, any designer, any creative who wants to kind of get an entry into a new field or gain a larger scale of consumers for what they have going on, what in your portfolio of things that you offer could you afford to give away? That feels really silly. You know, everyone's like, oh, what's the upcharge? How can I upsell? In today's world of microtransactions and free and freemium, to expect someone to come in sight unseen because you're talented and because you have a cool portfolio and to just give you the number one price that you put on the table sometimes might not be the best strategy long term for you, especially if you work at a brand that has a lot of products. It's like, well, what in this, not as a free trial, not as a taste. No, it's like, literally, no, here. This is what we do. You can have it. We have some other things that are great too. If you can afford to do it and it doesn't break your business model, being able to go in and give something for free long term, that extra value, can also help along the way. These are the thought processes of challenger brands, the ones that are not in necessarily positioned as leaders, but in doing so, they gain more market value. They begin to increase and eventually become leaders. If you can do it in a way that's sustainable, you can then create a brand and create a company that can keep that energy alive and keep the consumer's interest long term. Doing so, I think, is the new way of being a leader in the world. And so, my 3 takeaways. Being a leader isn't bad. Acting like one can be. Don't be complacent. Continue to innovate. Don't rest on your laurels. Challenger brand is a state of mind, not a state of being. You don't necessarily have to be in a position to be a challenger brand. You can act as a challenger and keep that energy alive. And then lastly, disrupt expectations. Add more value. Be valuable to the consumer. Put their needs first, and you'll be able to do a lot more in the world, no matter what it is that you create and do. I think I did that fairly fast, so I'd love to talk to you. Does anybody have any questions, anything they want to raise? I'm here, but thank you, everybody.
I can pass the mic. Who has questions? I know I have a question, but I don't want to go first. Oh, awesome.
First off, thanks for coming. This is great. My name is Daniel. I run an accelerator here in Detroit. We do a lot of work with underground musicians and artists. My question is, who's going to be the next Red Bull in Detroit? Because they had Red Bull Arts, they had a radio station, they were producing amazing online content with like the founders of Detroit Techno that still live here. So I'm curious from your perspective, who might the next Red Bull be for the city?
I'm hoping it's Red Bull again. If I'm being honest, I actually had a conversation with some of the guys at Red Bull a few weeks ago. It's like, hey, are you guys divested from this market? And they said no. The kind of leaning into what this whole presentation is about, they won. They're the top energy drink in the state of Michigan. Now they're focused on Ohio and Illinois. So it's like we don't have to spend as much money. They're not investing as much into the music festival movement. They're not doing. They brought Ryan Sheckler here and did a whole skate park thing at Hart Plaza. But to that point, there's a bunch of other things happening now. You know, you got the Grand Prix that happens there. We just saw the draft that came here. You've got the big opening at the Michigan train station. If I were to try to answer that question honestly, without speculation, I don't know. You know, there are a bunch of brands that have come here in the past. Heineken Red Star was here for a while. Vitamin Water did stuff for a while here, and then Red Bull probably invested the most. The problem with brands upholding communities and activations is like that is once they hit the bottom line and they turn over the consumer, there's no reason to spend the money there anymore. So I'm hoping that a group like this and the people that we all work with and for can begin to create opportunities like that for ourselves. And that would be my hope. I want to build more things at places like Spotlight. I want to talk more to the companies like Rock and who have spaces, less about money, more about the space, and then create community-driven things that act like Red Bull House of Art did, but aren't necessarily funded by a brand because it's impossible for them. It just doesn't make business sense for them to do it all the time. Yeah. Awful answer for what you asked, but that's the best I got.
I am Stephen Cadwell. Musically, I go by Killer Cad. I am a rapper.
That's a cool name, by the way.
Yeah, love. It's, so my question is kind of a two-parter, but as an independent artist who sees what rap has done in terms of just an overall scheme and what's being promoted and manipulated, what does the independent artist do to truly make that disruption and truly challenge every single norm that has really damaged this generation? That is my goal in this. And kind of to piggyback off of his question, I know I don't want a Red Bull. I believe that what's being built in the city is not just enough, but it can expand to be so much more than what it is. And how do we, make that push to really step out to a global aspect to show not even just a national, but a global aspect of what we actually do, what our culture actually is. I see these different places and poets and artists, and it's really booming, and they're starting to have more of a hand in it. I just want to know, where do you feel like the step into making that change and making that thing known is?
Those are great questions. I'm going to answer them backwards. Cool? Okay. In terms of making this market and Detroit a more globally recognized powerhouse, what will be required are for the disparate groups that do things to be in one place. What Detroit suffers from is, and I'm going to use a radio term, Detroit's a followers market in terms of the way a lot of media companies look at us. We don't break our own artists. We don't break our own industries. Outside of the auto business, if you are a creative from here that works globally, 9 times out of 10, you didn't build your audience here. You built your audience someplace else, and then you came back here. And because of that, the consumer here doesn't necessarily love you. They know you. And this is interesting. I had a conversation. Somebody asked me if I did a festival, because the Michigan Central thing happened, and Eminem was an executive producer, and Big Sean came, and Jack White came, and all of the. I mean, if you wrote down on a sheet of paper, who are artists from Detroit, they went boop 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 boop. But they were like, if we did something like that, would Detroiters care? I'm from Detroit. I grew up on 7 Mile. Like, I've been in the music business 20 years now. And I was like, will they come? Probably. Will they care? Probably not. And they're like, well, what does that mean? It's like, well, okay, if you threw something for free, knowing that there are all the groups of Detroit are disparate, and my group's not doing something, and I don't care about what the other groups are doing, and you say there's a free thing with famous people, I probably show up. If you tell me that thing is $25, I probably don't. There's the difference, right? And so if you want Detroit to be more globally significant, and the reason why the Movement Festival is so globally significant is they brought everything together. It's French DJs and techno DJs, and randomly 50 Cent might show up, and there's this and there's that. And it's like, oh, that's cool. And then now you have people from France and Quebec coming, and you have people from, Canada and the other places. Everybody's coming. If you want hip hop and Detroit hip hop to make more sense, bring all the different kinds of hip hop together. There's no reason why Ice Revezo and the Cash Doll can't be in the same thing as a Nassan or a Stoop or a Curtis Roach. There's no reason why they can't be in the same thing, but they're not, because they're aware of each other and don't do the same thing. And there's no reason why those guys are on the same thing as the R&B people. And there's no reason why those guys are on all the rock bands that are in Traverse City and Grand Rapids, and they don't come down. And that's the reason why those people don't come to Detroit for festivals. They stay up there. And God knows how many artists in Ann Arbor, and those folks don't come down. They only stay there. And you don't get global by being separate. That's the first thing. 2, if you're an independent artist from here who wants to do something, right now, leave. and I hate to say that. But for right now, that is true. And I don't necessarily mean leave physically. Have your brand leave here. Don't make Detroit stuff. Be who you are. Find where those people who like what you make are, and bombard them with your export. Don't move there, because now you're an import, and you're just a low bar LA artist now. But if you're a high bar Detroit export, well, if I like that kind of thing, you're special for me. And then from there, just grow the tribes in different places, and then once again, find a way to bring them all to one place. And however far you can afford to bring them. If that's, I've got 5 pockets in Texas, but I'm from Detroit and they like me. Around South by, do I do a little thing on the side and try to bring all the Texas people there? If I can afford a little bit more, and I have a lot of people in the South, can I go to the South and get 2 markets in the South to come to a concert in the middle? Can I do a tour around the South? Can I be a special guest on a bigger thing and try to, that's the thought process. It's just find the web, and then when you can afford to bring the web to center, do it. If not, continue to grow each one until possibly they overlap.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you very much.
What time is it? I don't have my phone. Okay, we got some time. Where'd the hands go? I see a few. Okay.
Good morning, John Gay from Jack in Detroit podcast. Great presentation, outstanding. Thank you. This might be a little bit in the weeds, and I apologize if it is, but what you said about giving something away for free kind of resonated with me. Is it good to just do that for the goodwill, or turn it into like a lead magnet for your business? Or when you're talking about giving away something for free, I'm just kind of curious how you translate that into connections and then obviously business. I know the connections piece comes first, but then the business also.
So if you think about if you think about business as an S-curve, and in the beginning, you're a guy who has a thing that's cool, and you're trying to sell it, and nobody knows about it. You're trying to build awareness. You're trying to build what you want to find are early adopters. And in finding early adopters, in those early adopters, you want to try to identify the mavens in the early adopters, the people who once they find the thing you like, they want to tell people about it. They
Like
love
a brand ambassador almost?
Almost, right? But maybe before then, because there's network effect people who will tell a lot of people about it. But in the beginning, it's just people who found you early and are proud. What you want to do in those early adopters, when you find that people are proud, give them a crazy amount of value so that they become not only ambassadors, become evangelists. When you have evangelists, what they'll tend to do is to tell their friends, and out of those friends, one of those people is probably really popular. Maybe not all of them, but one of them will be. And if that evangelist keeps telling the popular guy about the thing that they fell in love with, they'll tell other people. And then you move up the curve. Eventually, you do that enough and you reinvest, you'll get to a tipping point where you reach the mass. But the strategy of free in the beginning has nothing necessarily to do with lead gen. It has to do, to me at least, has to do with awareness, and then you want to collect as much data on who gets your free thing as possible, because you want to identify the people who are influential in your early adopter base. And then in them, you don't upsell them. You can upsell everybody else. But for them, hey, I saw that you like blah, 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 blah. How about these 5 other things I have? I'll give you, early adopter access to these things. You want to try to build up enough of your early adoption base to get to a place close to when you can reach a mass, even if it's an early mass of people, whatever the case may be. And that's when you monetize. When there's enough people who found you through a normal process for you to turn over a profit. Even if you monetize the first 200 people who came to your thing at the maximum amount and then they churned off, your company lasts 4 months. And so that's my answer to that, yeah.
Outstanding. Thank you.
Yep.
All right, last one.
First of all, I'm Gene Meadows,
Hey.
artist. First of all, thank you very much for putting that all together and being able to communicate it to us, your wisdom. Awesome. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That was lovely.
No,
You're the best.